In 1981, ITV made a detective drama about a man nobody took seriously. He wasn't tough, he wasn't respected, he wasn't even particularly wanted. And the programme didn't try to fix that. It didn't try to build him up. It didn't try to reveal a hidden brilliance. It didn't reassure the audience that this was, secretly, a man worth admiring. It simply let him be what he was. More than 20 years later, television came back to the same character, same name, same basic idea, but this time something had changed. Not the story, television itself. Because what sits between these two versions of Dangerous Davies is not just a gap in time, but a shift in what television expects from its characters, its structure, and its audience. This is not really a comparison of two performances. It is a look at what British television was willing to do in 1981 and what it needed to do by the time it tried again. The first version of Dangerous Davies, The Last Detective, arrives in 1981, starring Bernard Cribbins. And the first thing to notice is what it isn't. It isn't built like a series. It isn't constructed as a returning format. It doesn't feel like the beginning of something designed to run. Instead, it sits much closer to an older tradition of British television, self-contained, character-led, and fundamentally unconcerned with continuation. This is a single piece of television, a contained drama, a story that begins, unfolds, and ends without any real sense that it needs to leave the door open behind it. Cribbins' Davies is not presented as a misunderstood genius or a hidden talent waiting to be recognised. He's overlooked. He is sidelined. He is, in many ways, dismissed. And the programme does not argue with that judgment. It does not construct a counter-narrative designed to prove everyone else wrong. It does not position the audience as knowing better than the world around him. Instead, it places him inside that judgment and allows it to stand. That creates a very particular tone, because the interest here is not built from admiration or identification, but from observation. And the programme is not trying to resolve that tension. It is content to let it exist. There is a slight awkwardness to it, a sense that the character doesn't align neatly with the expectations of the genre, and crucially, the programme doesn't smooth that out. It doesn't need to, because this version of Dangerous Davies is not trying to establish a format. It is not trying to create something that can be returned to week after week. It has no obligation to protect the character, to stabilise the tone, or to ensure repeatability. It can afford to be a little uneven, a little unresolved, even a little uncomfortable. And that places it within a particular moment in British television, one where drama could still operate with a degree of independence from the demands of long-term structure, writer-led, self-contained, more interested in character than in format. Davies, in this version, is not shaped to fit television. Television, for a moment, allows itself to accommodate him. When Dangerous Davies returns in the 2000s as The Last Detective, starring Peter Davison, it returns to a very different landscape. Because by this point, television is no longer primarily organised around singular plays or one-off dramas. It is organised around series. And a series brings with it a set of requirements that fundamentally change how a character like Davies can be presented. This time, the programme is not a self-contained piece. It is a structure designed to repeat. It needs consistency. It needs stability. It needs an audience that will return. And that immediately alters the way Davies is handled. Davison's performance retains the core idea of the character. He is still underestimated, still overlooked, still not quite aligned with the expectations of the job. But the way the programme frames him is different. The audience is no longer left at a distance. We are guided. We are shown who he is. We are encouraged to understand him. We are positioned on his side. Where the earlier version allows ambiguity, this one reduces it. Where the earlier version observes, this one interprets. Davies is no longer simply a man overlooked. He becomes a man the audience is invited to value, even if nobody else does. And that shift is not accidental, because a returning series cannot afford to leave its central character unresolved. It cannot rely on discomfort or distance. It needs a stable relationship between character and audience. It needs reassurance. The tone follows. Where the 1981 version is matter of fact, even slightly awkward, the later series is warmer, more accessible, more controlled. It smooths the edges. It clarifies the intention. It ensures that the viewer is never left uncertain about how to feel. And again, this is not a flaw, it is a requirement. Because the program is no longer simply telling a story, it is maintaining a format. Davies now has to function as a character within a series, not just a detective within the story. He must be someone the audience can return to. And so the character is adjusted, not fundamentally changed, but reshaped, made clearer, made safer, and made sustainable. Placed side by side, these two versions of Dangerous Davies reveal something very specific, not about the character, but about television, because the core idea remains remarkably consistent. A detective who is underestimated, a man who does not fit comfortably within his own environment. That doesn't change. What changes is what television requires from that idea. In 1981, Davies is allowed to be overlooked without qualification. The program does not insist on his value. It does not reframe him for the audience. It simply presents him and allows the situation to stand. By the 2000s, that is no longer enough. Davies must be interpreted. He must be aligned with the audience. He must be, in some way, validated. Not necessarily within the world of the story, but within the structure of the program. The tone shifts accordingly, from observation to reassurance, from distance to alignment. And the structure shifts as well, from singular to repeatable, from self-contained to ongoing. What was once a one-off character study becomes a component in a continuing series, and with that comes a different kind of discipline. The character must hold, the tone must hold, the audience relationship must hold. Everything becomes more stable, more controlled, more defined. And in that process, something is gained: clarity, accessibility, continuity. But something is also lost: a certain looseness, a willingness to leave things unresolved, an acceptance of characters who do not quite fit the expectations placed upon them. Nothing essential about Davies has changed, but everything around him has. Dangerous Davies is not a story that was rewritten. It is a story that was reshaped to fit two different versions of television. In 1981, television could accommodate a character who did not quite resolve, could allow a certain awkwardness, certain distance, and a certain uncertainty. By the time the character returned, the space had narrowed. Television required clarity, it required consistency, it required a relationship with the audience that could be sustained. And so the same idea was adjusted, not to change it, but to make it work. The character remains, but the world around him does not. Thank you very much for listening. Always appreciated. I will be back on another day with another television show. Bye.